Welcome to Pullman, the place where they made those fancy train cars. A company town. The first company town in America. Pullman thought that he was going to fix everything with the labor issues that were so big in the 1800s. But he fixed nothing. A good place to start talking about Pullman is at his factory. Here you can see the corporate headquarters, and beside it is the factory where they made the trains. It goes on for several blocks, and there's another part of it in the back there that's under construction. It's in ruins and falling apart, but they made luxury cars, and they wanted their building to be a luxury building to show exactly the kind of quality that Pullman had. Notice the clock. You can imagine the workers looking at the clock, waiting for their shift to be over. The neighborhood is immediately to the south of 111th Street, which back then was called Florence Street, named after Pullman's daughter. But right now it says, keep out. Driving down Cottage Grove now, where the main railroad tracks were, and heading around to, the National Park Visitor Center. Obama made this into a national park when he was president. They're still working on what to do with it. But I'm going to park somewhere around here and give you a walk around this section of the neighborhood. I'm going to take you for a little walk around Pullman, kind of the center of town, and show you some things and talk about it. This is Arcade Park, which is kind of the center of Pullman. Over there is the National Monument headquarters. Across the park, you'll see the Hotel Florence. There was no drinking allowed in Pullman for the workers. That was the only place where people could drink because they were visitors. Over here are some row houses. The most expensive houses had a rent of about $50 to $70 a month, and that would have been some of these. The cheaper houses I showed on my drive would have been about $5 to $10 a month. That was the thing with the Pullman Strike, was he wouldn't lower the rent, even though he lowered the salaries and knew everyone's salary. This is a church that was built. It housed 10 different congregations at one point because, all the workers were different religions. So it's just a general church. It's been a Methodist church for the last 100 years. But it was meant to inspire religious practice to keep people from being anarchists, godless communist anarchists. Here's a row of houses called Arcade Row. They were all meant to be kind of a showcase of the neighborhood. So when they gave tours during the World's Fair, they would bring them here and say, look at these beautiful houses. Each house just as pretty as the next. They're all brick, 3 stories. Kind of townhouse style, built between 1880 and 1884. Across the street here is the Staples, and then it later served as a fire station for the neighborhood. There's a big drift of snow I'm going to walk through to get over there. Here you can see what I'm talking about. Here's the stable doors. And across the street is the railroad tracks. Celebrating the history, remembering it, I should say. And here you can see George Pullman. And right next to him is Eugene Debs and Asa Philip Randolph, 2 of the great labor leaders. Eugene Debs, the leader of the Pullman Strike and the American Railway Union, and Asa Philip Randolph, who began his career organizing Pullman porters. One thing that's interesting about company towns is the schools that they built. This is George Pullman School, built in 1909. Not the first school in the neighborhood, but I wonder what kind of things they would teach the kids at the Pullman-built schools. about history. It wouldn't be a Plensner history video if I didn't point out architecture. See the Y-shaped spigots coming off the house? Or if I talked about the ghosts. And you really feel the spirits of the place as you walk these streets, for the workers and the people. And about that idea that Pullman had, that he was going to fix everything by making a beautiful neighborhood where everyone would be happy, where nobody would ever need to go on strike, where nobody would ever need anything. But then all that changed when the Depression hit and he was forced to make decisions that he never thought he'd have to make. And this is where Pullman used to rent stalls to different grocers and shopkeepers to provide food and such for the people who lived here. You can see where the stalls would have been. In the middle is the market, which is now boarded up and crumbling into pieces. Here's where some of the stalls were, and it's a complete circle all the way around. Women in particular who moved here liked living in this section of the city. 11 miles from the closest liquor store, and this is in a day when alcoholism was way worse than it ever has been in history. And this is the day of the suffrage and temperance movement, but especially the temperance movement. These women saw this as an opportunity to raise a family in a safe place. Of course, how safe is it when your boss cuts your salary and doesn't lower the rent and forces you into a 3-month-long strike that cripples the entire nation? The end of the block is the factory. Far in the distance you can see the northernmost wheel works. There's a tower. I'll try and zoom in on it. Yeah, all the way there in the middle. And over here is one of the assembly plants. There's about 3 of the factory buildings that I know of. There might be 4 actually. One turned into apartments, still standing. And here you can see one of the plants. They're trying to put it back together to make it part of the new national monument. But you can see it's basically falling apart. This is no longer Florence Boulevard. Florence was the name of Pullman's favorite daughter, and he named a lot of things after her. This building was originally built as a residence for executives. Then it became a club house where at the end of the workday, Pullman would invite some of his executives in for a steak dinner where they would basically talk more business. Classic boss stuff, I think. Here you can see the factory tower. Across the street from the executive house here, it's really a large house, is the Hotel Florence. It's an annex of the hotel which was expanded during the World's Fair. And across the street you can see the actual hotel. I'll go walk in front of it. Here's the Hotel Florence, which had the only bar in town for visitors, businessmen who were coming to visit Pullman to make business deals, so they didn't want to leave them out. There's no social experiment being done on them. It operated as a hotel till the 1970s. So what we had here at Pullman was a great experiment in social engineering to try and eliminate the problems of the city by use of building a suburb, a perfectly planned suburb, a community, but it all went crashing down, and Pullman was forced to sell it. After he died, his daughter sold all the property, and he was declared un-American. for his attempts. That being said, the idea of creating a suburb free of urban problems is not something that goes away with Pullman. It continues to influence city building and city planning in American history.